Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to Campervan Campout Hub. I'm delighted to announce our next presentation, which is going to feature Tash once again from Life Beyond Bricks and the lovely Beth from She Is the Lost Girl. But before they start, I want to tell you a little story about my friend Rose. Now, I met Rose a few years ago. Her husband had just passed away. She was 82, and she bought a little Roma home from us. I had a motorhome dealership at the time. And Rose and Troy set off on their adventures on her own. Her husband would have hated, she said, going away in a motorhome. She said, now he's gone, I feel like I'm free to do it. And she did. I met Rose 3 years later. She came back to have the motorhome serviced. And I said, how are you enjoying it? She said, oh, it's brilliant. I've been everywhere. I said, where have you been? She said, I've just come back from Afghanistan. I said, what? Afghanistan? She said, oh, Matt, it was amazing. It was beautiful. I said, why did you go to Afghanistan? She said, well, I just thought, I've been everywhere. Where haven't I been? I rang my insurance company and said, would you insure me if I go to Afghanistan? They said, no. I thought, oh, well, I'll go anyway. So she did. And she said, what a beautiful country it was. She's now 88, and she's still traveling with her dog, Troy, in their little Roma home. They've since bought a newer Roma home, a tiny little camper, a bit like this one over here. And she is absolutely loving life on the road. Rose is an inspiration to me, as these two are, I'm sure, going to be to you. So I'd like to introduce Tash and Beth, more in their 20s than their 80s. But a little wink to you there, Tash.
Thank
nearly.
You.
Will you give them a big, warm Campout welcome to Beth, She's the Lost Girl, and Tash from Life Beyond Bricks.
That's lovely, thank you. And checks in the post for the 20s comment, thank you. About 10 years out there. So yeah, again, me again, brilliant. So thank you all for coming along. So obviously I've got Beth with me. I'll just give you a little bit of background. So you left school at 16 yeah. And went straight into full-time work, playing gigs in the evenings, yes. And yeah, working. You've been travelling the world, haven't you, for full-time for over 9 years now?
Yes, that's true.
So from what I understand, you went straight into work, obviously saved up, and then bought a one-way ticket to,
yes,
where was
it?
New
Zealand.
To New Zealand.
Yep.
And what you thought would have been a short trip has turned into, obviously, over 9 years of full-time travelling.
Yes, somehow, yep.
And you've had a variety of jobs along the way,
yeah.
Including being a portrait photographer on a boat, is that right?
Yes, that's right. That was a bit of a crazy one.
And obviously, for anyone that doesn't know or doesn't follow Beth already, she's backpacked, car camped around New Zealand, and you've converted 2 vans
yeah.
into homes now, haven't you? And you're now a full-time content creator.
Yes.
So thank you ever so much for joining me.
Yeah, that's all right.
I've got a few questions because I would love to obviously ask you and find out more about your travels, about your journey, and kind of what's inspired you and what's behind it. So if it's okay with you, I will dive straight in.
Yes, go for it, thank you.
On my professionally made cards that I did. So, what was it that made you decide to, sort of, when you finished school, go straight from school into work, and how did that decision sort of pave the way for your future travels and career? Like, did you know that's what you were going to do when you first went straight into work?
That's a very good question. So I think the leaving school quite young thing, I don't think school is for everyone. And I know a lot of people who live like this probably agree with me that I feel like school sets you up for a 9-to-5 office job, and I spent all of my time just looking out the window at school, and I didn't do too badly, but as soon as I had the opportunity to leave, I just couldn't wait to get out of there. And obviously, I didn't think, oh, I'm really excited to work full time, but that's kind of what you've got to do at that point, because obviously I didn't want to live with my parents forever. But it's not, I wish I had a deeper answer as to how it paved the way to what I do now, but really, it was because I was working so much and I had money which my friends didn't have because I was working and saving. I worked really hard. I worked in Greggs for 3 years, and in the evenings I was playing music in bars and stuff. So, yeah, I didn't really know what was coming next, and my decision to go to New Zealand, which was what kind of changed everything, was just a random backpacking trip, really, that I just, on the whim, just decided to do.
I absolutely love that, and you're right. School isn't for everybody, is
No.
it? And I think certainly from sort of doing the job and the career and the cars and the house, selling up to go full time makes you realise that actually you can do whatever you want. So I love that answer. So it doesn't have to be deep. I think that's really cool.
Thank you.
Just being honest, I think, is what it's about.
Yeah.
So obviously you went obviously to New Zealand, and you were working, as you said, a crazy lot of jobs. What was the craziest job you ever had while you were travelling?
Probably, I mean, I've done quite a lot of jobs. I mean, when you're traveling, you end up doing like a couple of days work here and there if somebody needs you to do something, and whatever you do. But the weirdest one probably is working on a potato farm in Australia. And it doesn't sound that weird, but it was honestly the craziest thing that I've probably ever done. Just boiling hot sun, standing on the back of a tractor, sorting mud from potato from like rat that came up on the conveyor belt, and it was really intense. And yeah, just learning what my body could do. And I think a lot of people were like, I know you touched on this in the other talk, where you feel like you can't do these things, but as soon as you start doing them, you're like, oh, I can actually do it. And like thinking to myself, I can't believe I'm in Australia and I'm working on a farm. Like, at what point did this even happen? But I'm somehow here. So that felt crazy. And I've worked in an ice bar as well in New Zealand.
Wow.
So
That's cool.
the complete opposite of being hot on a potato farm in Australia, being extremely cold. Yeah, they're probably the two weirdest ones.
Wow, ice bar, I bet that was cool.
Very cool, yeah, definitely cool.
I didn't even mean to do that. So in your own words, because I had a little look on your website, your blog, you enjoy slow travel. You said it's not about ticking off countries, but immersing yourself, which I personally love, because I agree with that. I don't think it's about going from country to country. I think it's about taking your time, really, putting yourself in the culture. So is there anywhere in particular you've been that has surprised you, like good or bad?
Yeah, I mean, actually, I know Mandy said this earlier. She said Turkey was really surprising, and I didn't know what to expect at all. But that was a beautiful country and such an easy place to go with a van because there's so much freedom. And you can park up in so many different places without restrictions, so that really surprised me. And yeah, spending longer periods of time in a place, you really just get to know how things work. Like going to do a grocery shop, for example. If you were in an all-inclusive, you wouldn't probably experience that, but it feels like you're living more as a local, and I love that, and we learned so much. But obviously, having just travelled in the van, backpacking, Vietnam surprised me a lot. I love it there. At one point, I was like, you know what, I'm just going to move to Vietnam. But obviously I didn't, because I'm here living in a van. But yeah, that was just an amazing place to slow travel.
That sounds incredible. And did you ever find the language barrier? Was that ever a problem? Or was there a language barrier in some of these places you went?
There's always a language barrier. But I feel I've always found that if I learn hello, goodbye, thank you, people are always willing to try and say a little bit in English as well. And most of the places I've been, English is quite widely spoken, but obviously you've got Google Translate and you find a way to work it out, don't you? So
yeah, definitely. So you started out doing a bit of backpacking, and obviously now you're doing a bit of van life or van travel, shall we call it. Now that you've experienced both, I'm not going to ask you what your favourite is, because obviously they're both completely different experiences. But how do they sort of fulfil the different aspects of your desire for freedom and exploration?
Yeah, so they're so different. I mean, backpacking is so much freedom. You can, at a moment's notice, just fly to a different country or get on a train for 10 hours and you're somewhere completely different. And you don't have to plan van insurance and tell your insurance company that you're going to be in a different country and your breakdown cover and organise all of that. It is literally just, you've got everything you own on your back and you just go. So that is the ultimate adventure for me. And van life, you have all of your home comforts. You can cook a meal, whatever you want. But it is a bit more restrictive, I personally think, because you've got to follow the rules, the Schengen rules, and it's counting 90 days and making sure you've got insurance. And it doesn't feel like the ultimate freedom to me, which is kind of stupid because van life obviously is for most people, but backpacking is just chaotically wonderful to me.
I love that, chaotically wonderful.
It is so good.
That's my new favourite phrase. That's brilliant. So obviously, when you started, you were doing physical jobs, working in ice bars and on boats and different things, but then eventually you moved into online work. Did you have any sort of initial fears about moving into working online, having done your experience of physical jobs? And if you did, how did you overcome them?
Yeah, I didn't think it was possible because as someone who doesn't have like a higher education or a degree or anything, I was under the impression that to work online you need some kind of degree for anything. And so I was at kind of giving up point, but then I did a course for teaching online. And obviously that's the obvious thing, but it didn't seem like it at the time that you can just do a course. Like, it doesn't matter how old you are. If you feel like taking a course in something completely random, then just do it. And I ended up teaching online, which it turns out I didn't need a degree for. So I just got the qualification. I was really worried about that, to be honest. But you can just make it work.
No, it's great because actually we touched on that in our, I did a digital nomad talk yesterday, and we sort of touched on that it's never too late to take a new course, to retrain, to do something. So off the back of that, what's been the most surprising thing about transitioning from physical to online work? Was there anything, did you think, oh, that would have been really difficult, but it wasn't? Was there anything that surprised you?
I think nothing negative at all. It's been a completely positive experience because obviously you can do it from anywhere, which was always the goal for me. It can be a little bit difficult, obviously, having internet all the time, as most of you know, if you are in a van quite a lot. But yeah, it's just there's so much more freedom, especially when I was teaching online. There was obviously a time I had to be online, face-to-face with the students. So it did level up a little bit when I obviously started working for myself, because it was just, if I don't want to work that day, then I just won't. But then obviously you run the risk of being like, oh, I don't want to work the day after either. Then at some point,
want to work.
No, so you've got to really keep on top of it and time management. But it's been really positive.
That's really good. I'm sort of jumping back a little bit here because I'm just really interested in the fact you've done backpacking and van life, and you've done so many different types of travel, and you're not even 30 yet. It's fantastic. But what are some of the common misconceptions about sort of full-time travel, full-time backpacking, or van life that you've encountered? Certainly, I suppose, in the early days when you decided to go straight into work and then get that one-way ticket.
Yeah, I think in the early days I didn't really think about it, to be honest, and I've only ever thought about it since doing social media, because I get so many comments, and it annoys me because I've worked really hard, but I get so many comments saying, oh, is your daddy paying for this? And I'm just like, yeah, haha, whatever. But honestly, people think that traveling and backpacking and van life is for rich kids, especially people who are in their 20s doing it. How do we afford it? But they don't know that it's cheaper to live in a van than to live in a house. So, the common misconception is just it's not for working class people, but it is, because that's what I've done. So,
that's fantastic. I'm talking about van life here, but I suppose travelling in general, it can be quite a solitary experience, sort of you're on your own, but there is quite a strong community aspect. So how do you connect with other people that are travelling, other van lifers or backpackers, and what role would you say that community's played in your travel journey?
I think, it can be solitary, but honestly, I've met more people in my travelling lifestyle that I ever met, even at school, because I was really shy, and I still am. But I feel like a lot of people who travel are quite introverted and like their own space and their own time. So it's nice to meet other people like that. But I've met so many people on Instagram and then met up with them at these van shows, or even meet people in random car parks. Just the other night, actually, we met a couple of people in a car park near here, and I was like, oh, are you going to Campervan Campout? And they hadn't heard of it, and then they came along yesterday for the day.
That's amazing.
And it was really cool, and you just never know where you're going to meet people, but the community is so nice.
They're lovely, and I think I was talking to someone yesterday. I said we lived in our house for 10 years plus and probably said hello to our neighbours, or which bin day is it, But then when you're in the van, within about an hour of meeting someone, you end up in their van, sharing a cup of tea, having a drink, and like you say, for me, it does play quite a big part in the travels. It's absolutely fantastic. So, can you share your top 3 must-haves for anyone considering van life or backpacking? Do you have any top 3 must-haves?
Yes, so I was thinking about this and thinking about things that could be for both van life and backpacking. And the number one thing is a water filter. It's quite a practical thing. In the van, something like a filter that's attached to your tap, so that when you turn your tap on, you're just filling up with filtered water. And for backpacking, you can get like a bottle with a filter on it. It just saves plastic, and you can just drink anything. You don't have to buy bottles of water. So that's probably number one. The second thing I was thinking of is like a little journal. And I know it's not an essential. You don't have to write everything down. But, I mean, this is one of the most exciting things. Like, I don't know, it's an exciting part of life. And if you stop traveling, you want to read maybe what you've done day to day. And I write down every single day. I've done it for the last 2 years. I write down exactly what I've done and my location. It's really cool to look back on. So that's a cool thing to have. And the last one, download, it's not a physical item, but download offline maps. It doesn't matter if you're van life or backpacking. Being able to know where you are is really important. So definitely that.
Okay, so they go for both, do they? Or would you have different top 3s for backpacking or van life?
Yeah, that's probably for both.
For both.
Yeah.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah.
Keeping it nice and light.
Yeah,
Not
keeping it
taking too
simple.
much stuff. Yep. So obviously I've asked you the sort of questions I was interested in, but I'd love to open it out to the floor if there's any other, if there's anyone that's got any questions or anything like that. Anyone? Oh gosh, so quiet. Anything you want to
It's
ask?
Sunday.
So it is Sunday. It is
Sunday
Sunday. We're all a
lunchtime.
bit sleepy.
We're all wishing we were eating Yorkshire puddings. Is anyone considering backpack life? Because I found that really interesting. At the back there, we've got a question.
He's going to make you run all the
Are
way
you
over
allowed
there.
to ask a question? I'm not running. You're not going to make me run either.
Thank you. I'm going to put you on the spot here, and out of everything that you've done over the past almost a decade of full-time travelling, what would you say is the most standout experience that you've had?
Oh, that's a good question. Most standout experience. I'm going to do one for backpacking and one for van life. Definitely from living in a van, most standout experience was just parking on a cliff in Cappadocia, which is like in the middle of Turkey, and just opening the door, and there's just hot air balloons everywhere. Like, you could just hear them roaring, like the fire going straight over the top of the van. Like, I'll never forget that. That was insane. And backpacking, probably, I know this sounds really boring, but I do like a good relax. Probably just sitting on a beach in Thailand eating a pad thai, to be honest. And I've done a few exciting things. I've like jumped out of planes and bungee jumped and whitewater raft, but just, stand out to me is just sitting on a beach eating food, really. I love it.
Oh, I love that. That sounds incredible. Sounds like a great day out.
Can I follow that as I walk over here? What's the most challenging experience you've had in the van and backpacking?
Oh, so backpacking, I faced a massive challenging time, actually. It's not, obviously it hasn't all been easy, and like no one would think it is easy, but when I was in New Zealand, I was there for 3 years, and at one point I couldn't leave, even if I wanted to, because I ran out of money, and I was working, but the rent was so expensive that I was just like, I can't even afford a flight out of here. And so I started working for accommodation and working at the same time, which is like, I had no hours free of my day, pretty much. But just realising that I had to, I don't know, it was all on me, and if anything went wrong, it was like, you're the only person who can sort this out and get yourself out of it. So that was very challenging. And as for van life, probably breaking down in Albania, or maybe breaking down in France. Probably the France one, because we were coming very dangerously close to our Schengen days, getting back to the UK, and obviously we broke down on our way back, so we would have had to have left the van, but luckily we got it fixed, so yeah.
Do you find in those challenging situations, if you were to think about it beforehand, you'd panic because you're like, how do I do this if this happens, what if? But certainly I think I've found, when you just go for it and you're on the road full time, when a situation does come up, you suddenly find this you suddenly find this inner strength and you just have to deal with it head on.
Yeah.
So you've kind of got no choice. And then afterwards you look back and then process it and go, oh my God, that was really scary, or I can't believe that happened. But you just find this, as an overthinker, I just feel like if I'd known it was coming, I would have panicked. But you just find this energy and you know, to just get on with it.
Yeah, if somebody said to you, one day you're going to be in a random town in New Zealand with no money, I'd have been like, oh, I won't go to New Zealand then. But when it happens, you know, you are just like calm comes over you and you're like, right, I just need to work out what to do. Like, just figure it out.
Definitely. And then I cry about it in 2 days' time once I've thought about it and processed it.
That happened. Oh my God.
So, well, I've never been... Oh, we got another question.
We also love food and eating, and I love the idea of eating pad thai on a beach. But my question is, what do you do to keep active when you're on the road?
What, sorry?
What do you do to keep active when you're on the road?
Oh, to keep active. Oh, I'm really bad at that, so I'm probably the worst the worst person to answer this. I don't work out or do any form of exercise apart from just walking around. So obviously it's good to aim for like maybe 10,000 steps a day or whatever, however many you want, and just try and make that happen, which I don't do that all the time. But yeah, just keep walking around. If you're into exploring, then obviously going on walks is probably the best way. But I do see people getting their weights outside their van and lifting weights, and I'm like, that's impressive. I wish I had the willpower for that.
I always remember when I think I was parked up next to Gemma and Campbell actually, and I opened my at a show, and I opened my bedroom blind at 8 o'clock in the morning, and Gemma's out there doing like yoga and different things, and I was like, oh, shut my blind.
I can confirm this morning Gemma did have her yoga mat out, and I was like, oh, I feel a little bit bad. I could be doing that, but I'm not. Not going to do that.
But no, that's a really good point actually, because that's one thing that I've found since moving into the van full time is, especially if you're working from the van, literally my bathroom, kitchen and desk are within 2 meters of each other. So it's amazing how much less you move your body. So have you, obviously I know you don't work out specifically, but do you think it's easier to stay active backpacking because you're on the move more as opposed to when you're in the van and you think, oh, I'm just going to have a chill out?
It is, because backpacking, obviously, you're putting a heavy backpack on your back, and sometimes just thinking, no, I'm not gonna bother getting a taxi. I'm just gonna walk to the train station. And then you get there, and you're like, that was a terrible idea, and you're just sweating with a big backpack on. But yeah, you're just constantly moving, constantly reorganising everything, and van life is definitely a bit more chill. So I'd have to make a bit more of an effort to get out.
Definitely have to make more effort. Maybe I need to go backpacking. But how I'd carry 3 cats and a backpack, I do not know. So I'll have to rethink that one. So that's a really great question. Thank you. Are there any other questions? Uh-oh.
Hang on, I'm coming, Mandy.
Make him run. He had heart surgery,
I can't run.
Okay. Have you had, or can you think of one thing that you would love to do again and one thing you would never want to go anywhere near again?
Ooh, so
excellent question. Nice.
One thing I would love to do again, actually I'll start with the other one. One thing I wouldn't want to do again is probably bungee jumping. I honestly I hated that. I know usually people are like, oh, I'll do a bungee jump, and they do it and they're like, yeah, that was great. And I honestly did it and I was like, no, that's not for me. I won't be doing that again. What I do want to do again, gosh, probably just the summers in the UK with friends. I didn't think I did, so I typically try and stay out of the UK mostly because I just like the hotter weather. But yeah, we've had a few summers now just spending time with friends, like other van lifers, and that's a goal for this summer. That was really, really nice. So
I love that. Yeah. That's great. Thank you. Oh.
So you love travel and everything then and that now, but do you see this as for the foreseeable future, or do you see an end point when you want to slow down and stop, or is backpacking and van life literally for the foreseeable future?
Oh, that's a good question. I think about this quite a lot actually. I feel like I could continue traveling full time for quite a few years, but then sometimes I do think of like a little plot of land and a little cabin would just be nice, just to have somewhere to like go when I just want to chill. But van life is so cheap that I think I'll probably need to do this for quite a few more years to save up. So this is not something I can think about right now. But yeah, I think I would always travel a lot, but if I do settle down, it would be like, little cabin in the woods or something. So one day.
That sounds amazing. That sounds lush.
That was a good question.
That was a good question, actually. Thank you. Thank you very much. Are there any other questions? No? No? Cool. So I've got one more to finish the session on. What advice would you give to anyone who's feeling a bit stuck, perhaps in their life or their situation? They're wanting to go travelling, but they're afraid to make the leap. What advice would you give to them?
I would say, the hardest thing that you'll do is booking, if it's a flight that you want to book or if it's somewhere you want to go, or just book it. Get it up on your computer, go through all the steps, and think to yourself, I don't have to click buy on this flight ticket, so that's fine. Not going to put any pressure on myself, but then just close your eyes and click buy anyway. And don't give yourself a choice. And same if you want to do it in a van, just pack your van up and just think, yeah, I'll just do it right now. Don't hesitate, is what I would say. Because I think if I'd have hesitated, that first trip that I went to New Zealand and maybe not done it, had been too scared, then I don't know what I'd be doing now. Not this. So, definitely just
do it.
Throw yourself in, yeah.
Yeah, just do it. And I think that's brilliant because obviously, plan it, have a little backup plan, but I think it's so much better to, think, say you did it, and if you didn't like it or it didn't work out, that you tried it rather than to regret not doing
definitely.
it. So I think that's fantastic advice. So that's brilliant. Well, thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
For
It's
coming up
lovely.
and sharing your story with us. Hopefully it's inspired some people because it is incredible. And we'll be hanging around if anyone wants to ask any other questions for the next sort of 10-15 minutes. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Can I just ask, Beth, where do we find you online, Beth? Where do we find you online? There it is. There it is.